In recent years, we've seen a disturbing rise in violations of religious freedom against Christians in particular worldwide. I saw this when I was chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. And a lot of this is happening at the hands of Western governments. Now, this week, the Family Research Council Center for Religious Liberty published an update to its report, Free to Believe. Now, this intensifying intolerance toward Christians in the West, which identifies and covers 168 specific incidents across 16 Western countries throughout the past 4 years. The report shows how Western governments, which really ought to be the standard bearers for upholding freedom of religion and expression, frequently undermine the fundamental human right to religious freedom. Joining me now to discuss this is the author of the report, Arielle Del Turco, and she is the director of our Center for Religious Liberty here at the Family Research Council. Arielle, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you for having me.
Now, before we get into this report, you, along with some others from the Family Research Council, have been participating in the International Religious Freedom Summit for the past couple of days. In fact, you moderated a panel on religious freedom violations in Western democracies, something you know a little bit about.
Yeah, it was a good event, and it's especially good that we were able to highlight this issue on the panel. In settings where we talk about international religious freedom, people often think about the worst cases, the worst case scenarios in China and Iran where people are imprisoned or killed in Nigeria. But we would be remiss to ignore what's happening in the West, because it not only affects us, and religious freedom violations against us in the West are important, but it also affects our ability to advocate for those around the world. If there's no religious freedom in the West, there's no one to speak up for the persecuted.
Well, I mean, we should be surprised that we see growing hostilities in countries like North Korea, China, Nigeria, when we're neglecting it here in the West, where we had long been kind of the champions of religious freedom.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And the Biden administration has just totally neglected religious freedom, obviously domestically, but even as an international issue. There are persecuted reaching out for help, for the Biden administration to advocate on their behalf, and they really hear silence in response. So it's sad to see. We need to be raising awareness about this.
Let's talk about the report, 168 violations, and it is not exhaustive. It's just some of those that just making the point. A lot of people recognize a lot of violations during COVID, but unfortunately, it looks like the trends continue even though COVID is gone.
Yeah, so under COVID, it really gave governments an excuse to use their power to squeeze churches. It gave bad political leaders an excuse to go after Christians for whatever reason. But now we're seeing not COVID being an issue, but censorship and attacks on free speech being the primary issue, where we're seeing Western governments specifically go after Christians and violate their religious freedom.
Is there kind of a hub of issue? I mean, is there one particular area that we see this springing forth from?
Yeah. Well, you might not be surprised, Tony, but it's just about every issue that we care about at Family Research Council. The core issues are going to be homosexuality, speaking out against gay marriage, speaking out against transgenderism. We've seen, even in the United States, teachers fired for refusing to use preferred pronouns for students, and also on abortion. We've seen in the United Kingdom people silently praying outside of abortion facilities, silently in their own head, not holding anything, and the police come and ask them what they're doing, and the police will ask them, "Are you praying?" And if you respond, "In my head, maybe," which one woman, Isabel von Spruce, did, she was arrested for that. So we do see around these hot...
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it is these hot button cultural issues where when Christians go against the secular orthodoxy, they're going to get punished.
So what was the response today as you chaired this panel, moderated this panel, on the growing list of violations in these Western democracies?
You know, I think this is one of the most well-received panels I've been a part of, Tony, and I really think that's because the audience is hungry for this. A lot of these people are IRF advocates, international religious freedom advocates. They know what's going on around the world, but they also see what's happening at home in the United States. They see what's happening in the West, and I think they're very concerned.
So, final question for you, Arielle. Do we see growing presence of a pushback where people are saying, you know what, I know we've seen this growing hostility, but this is so fundamental, we have to stand against it.
Yeah, we do, and you want to encourage that as well. I interviewed on the panel today one gentleman who was fired from his job teaching at a Christian college for a tweet talking about how homosexuality should not be accepted in the church. This is obvious. We see it in Scripture. We see it in church history. But even for saying that, he was fired. But he was still thankful for the pushback that American Christians and Christians across the West did. Like, he was fired for a tweet, and in response, they started a Twitter campaign to support him.
Wow. Well, and we got to do what we can with what we have. Arielle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Good job.